So would you join me in welcoming our dear friend who lives south of here on our great Mississippi River of Cape Girardeau, David Limbaugh, and he is truly a good friend and a good friend of all of us. Was a great friend of Phyllis's, and we are just excited that he took time out of a very important project to be here and talk with you tonight. David.
Thank you. As a lawyer, you're paid by the hour. And as an author, I'm paid by the page. And that's why I have so many footnotes. That and the fact that I have no incidental knowledge, no knowledge at all, and so I have to borrow knowledge from other people, like Evan. So it's an honor to be invited to speak here, especially among this group. You know, you can't fake it in a group like this, and I don't like that. I like to go to uneducated audiences, and they look up to me. I doubt that's going to happen here, but I'm going to take my chances because I don't know how to say no to Ms. Hearn. Okay, in 1798, Noah Webster, who I know you all have heard of, spoke these moving words at an oration in New Haven that I think are instructive for us today. How glorious was it for America that her revolution was guided by wise and able men, and that scarcely was its progress disgraced by mob violence. If there is a species of despotism more ferocious, more merciless, and inexorable than another, it is the dominion of bullies and ruffians. He didn't say the modern Democratic Party, but I know he was thinking. May the illustrious example of the conductors of the American Revolution be sacred to imitation in every period of our history. Never, my fellow citizens, let us exchange our civil and religious institutions for the wild theories of crazy projectors, or the sober, industrious, moral habits of our country for experiments in atheism and lawless democracy. Experience is a safe pilot, but experiment is a dangerous ocean full of rocks and shoals. Since the establishment of our independence, and more especially since the operation of national government, our growth and prosperity have verified the most optimistic predictions. In the general information of the body of citizens and in mechanical ingenuity, the American character stands probably unrivaled. In every branch of science, it is highly respectable. No nation can boast of more industrious and enterprising citizens. Such advantages of a political, moral, and commercial nature are not to be bartered away for visionary schemes of government or fraternal embraces. Our fathers were men. They were heroes and patriots. They fought, they conquered, and they bequeathed us a rich inheritance of liberty and empire which we have no right to surrender. Yes, my fellow freemen, we have a rich and growing empire. We have a lucrative commerce to protect. We have indefeasible rights. We have an excellent system of religion and of government. We have wives and children and sisters to defend. And God forbid that the soil of America should sustain the wretch who lacks the will or the spirit to defend them. Let us then rally around the independence and constitution of our country, resolved to a man that we will never lose by folly, disunion, or cowardice what has been planned by wisdom and purchased with blood. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Well, it's going to go downhill from this point, but I had to find something profound. And really, it is amazing to me. What strikes me about that, among many other things, is it was a call to arms. It was a laying down the gauntlet for future generations and trying to shake people into sobriety. We have the precious gem of liberty that was bequeathed to us by the foresight and wisdom of our founding fathers, Don't take it for granted. Already, probably 20 years later, they were starting to take it for granted because it's human nature. And we are definitely taking it for granted now. We don't even hear the word liberty anymore, except in conservative circles. It's a bygone thought among liberals. Liberal comes from the word liberty. They don't care about liberty. They care about control and getting their agenda done. So one of the things that I want to stress, and I did stress in my book, is that we need to resurrect liberty as a concept and revitalize it in our hearts. So I just wanted to draw that lesson from Noah Webster's words. These are troubling times that we live in. I've written 10 books, and the first 5 were political, and then I wrote 4 Christian-themed books, having no knowledge either of politics or religion. I really am. I mean, I'm a model parent for my kids, and look at what you can do with so little talent. And the fact is that when Regnery, my publisher, asked me to go back to politics because the religious books are kind of wearing themselves thin, they didn't really say that, but you ought to really consider it's an election year. Plus, it's a very serious time. It didn't take much persuading because, in my opinion, and this will, of course, sound cliche, but it'll not stop me from saying it, this is the most important election ever. Now, I don't, when people scoff at that and say, yeah, they've been saying that the past 10 elections. Yes, and it's increasingly true. The left is more emboldened. Obama laid down the plan for them to transform America. Now they are in warp speed doing it. And if we don't stop them, our kids, my kids, and their kids will live in slavery. And my dad used to say that to Rush and I, with good reason. The communist threat was growing and strong. But it is even more true today. And it scares me because it's happening internally. It was obviously happening internally then too, to some extent. But it is really going on now, and we have to wake up. The left is irrational, arrogant, and out of control. And one of my pet peeves, and I think it's one thing I share with Noah Webster, is our side, so many of them, used to lack the sense of urgency that we're faced with. But the public didn't lack the urgency. That's why the Tea Party arose, that's to a great extent. And that's why Donald Trump arose. Donald Trump isn't some political leader that rose out of a vacuum. He is a product. He is a symptom of what was going on. People are mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. And don't get me wrong, Donald Trump is a perfect leader for this movement. But he didn't start it. And it was going on for a long time, and it has now come to fruition. And I don't think the Republican Party has ever been more united and proud to support a president that is doing so well. So the purpose of this talk is not to promote the book because it's pretty much run its course. But when she asked me to speak and I'm working on another project, she says, "What do you want to speak about?" I said, "I don't know. Like I said, I know nothing." And she goes, "Well, why don't you talk about your book?" "Well, I don't know anything about that either." I didn't know. So I said, "Good. Then I don't have to prepare." So that's why I'm talking about the book. I don't have to prepare, but I actually did prepare. But so my book is about how extreme and radical the left is on all fronts, and I want to get into that, and you're all aware of that. But I want to get into it with a little specificity. The first thing I want to say is, isn't it rich that the Democrats are so up in arms about alleged interference with the election when it didn't occur? And they're so upset about interfering with our democracy, they mean constitutional republic, but our democracy, and yet that's all they've been doing since Trump came down that escalator, is interfering with the people's will. Oh, but the people didn't vote for him, the Electoral College. No, you want to get rid of the Electoral College also. They want to do end runs about that. The point is, they don't have any respect for the system. The end justifies the means with them, and so they have no credibility on this entire issue. So to them, Trump is just a high crime and misdemeanor personified, and they've been looking for evidence, some colorable claim to impeach him since the time he came on. Now they've got some bogus things, and it's going to fall flat. And thank goodness the polls are showing that it's backfiring on them. So the world is going crazy. America's following suit. The left's decade-long assault on our founding principles has finally come to fruition. Up is down, right is wrong, evil is good. We're in a rapid descent to lunacy. Every great world empire falls, and we are not immune to it, immune from it. And we are, and it usually happens in history through self-inflicted wounds, and obviously that's what is happening to us today. It is up to us to reverse it. Only patriots who recognize the problem and who are willing to get engaged and get their hands dirty in the system can reverse this insanity that's going on. The United States is the freest and most prosperous and most benevolent nation in the history of the world, precisely because of its founding principles. We deny at our peril the threats that it is undergoing right now. People used to say that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party share the same goals. They just have different ideas about how to get there. Now, I never bought into that, but I especially don't buy into it now. The Democrats don't at all have the same goals we do. We have different worldviews. There could be no sharper contrast. We love America as founded. We believe in liberty, equality of opportunity, racial colorblindness, equal protection under the law, and the rule of law. We're pursuing a vision of American greatness in which our government limits its own intrusive powers in order to unleash the awesome power and ingenuity of free American people. We have faith in the inherent goodness, generosity, and kindness of Americans and their dedication to their families, neighbors, and communities. We believe the American nation is exceptional and worth defending, including the border. By contrast, the left, which now wholly owns the Democratic Party, wholly rejects the nation's origins and founding ideas. They deny that they do, as they bring up the Constitution all the time, while they scramble to nominate Supreme Court justices who will openly flout the Constitution. They are socialists, obsessed with alleged income inequality, and want to force equal outcomes through progressive income taxes, wealth taxes, estate taxes, onerous regulations over every aspect of our lives. Truthfully, they are consumed with fury at their own nation. They detest much of the history of this country, which they believe was born in the sins of continental theft, genocide, slavery, white privilege, sexism, and mercenary capitalism. They're on a mission to right all these alleged wrongs, but more importantly, to punish those who they perceive to be still benefiting from them. The American people, in their view, are crawling with racists who want to resurrect Jim Crow. Thus, Americans need systematic indoctrination through every conceivable lever. The education system, entertainment, the media, corporate America, and now the social media giants, to disabuse us of our backward, unenlightened mentality. Every element of American society must be politicized with this goal in mind. Every American must be shamed publicly and vehemently for any utterance that strays beyond rigid ideological boundaries. You can't listen to this and dare say I'm exaggerating, by the way. Rejecting the principle of equal opportunity for all, the left pits Americans against one another according to race, gender, class, and other categories in a grim struggle for power and government largesse. Now, Donald Trump believes America is great, and he wants to make it greater by restoring and revitalizing our founding traditions. Now, whatever else you want to say about him, even the never-Trumpers, they can't deny he's a patriot. You can't deny that he genuinely loves the American flag, that he genuinely wants to embolden and rebuild our defenses and the military. And you got to feel good supporting a president doing that. By contrast, the Democrats, and I have a list of about 20, and I eradicated about 17 of them because I don't want to read to you, but about some of the things they say about Trump. Now keep in mind, that they vilify Trump for being coarse, crude, rude, impolite, insulting, and hateful. It blows my mind how much self-awareness they lack. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that America is close to garbage and racist. Andrew Cuomo, we're not going to make America great again. It was never that great. He had fun trying to walk that back. Senator Cory Booker, I'm a big believer that if this country hasn't broken your heart, then you don't love her enough. That's kind of like O.J. saying he loved Nicole too much. Because there's things that are savagely wrong in this country. There's a normalcy of injustice that we've accepted. Eric Holder, that blazing patriot, said, "When did you think America was great? This notion of greatness of an American past," said Holder, "never in fact existed." Which, by the way, he believed that. Obama believed that. People tell me how wonderful Obama is. Sorry, I wrote 2 hate Obama books, so I'm not going to I don't hate. In fact, I love him because they sold well. But Obama went on an apology tour, and it was interesting to watch liberals deny that he was apologizing for America. Well, why would I have been mad about it then? I'm just making it up because I want to dislike him? No, he was apologizing for America on foreign soil and on American soil. Michelle, the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of America. Not because of Barack. Well, why then? Why? I don't know. You know, it's these people have a contempt for America as founded, and they demonstrate it every day. And Obama saying he wanted to fundamentally transform America. Fundamentally transform. You don't love a country. You don't want to fundamentally transform something you love. By the way, I said that before everybody else did. Not that they knew who I was, not that they plagiarized it, not that they stole it, but I did say it. So I'm not stealing it from them. So we hear people talking about, well, the Democratic Party is not really that far gone, and they're just a bunch of upstarts, the squad, Tlaib and Omar and Alexandria Ocasio. And it's not that. They're just getting a lot of attention, and the Democratic Party is not that radical. I'm telling you guys and girls, it is. All you got to do is watch Biden start acting like transgenderism is the greatest thing he's ever heard. He's been fighting for it his whole life, and he hadn't even heard of it for 6 months. They all pander. The ones that don't believe it in their hearts are so shameless they might as well. But the movement, the momentum in that party is pure socialism, gender, race insanity, and all the rest of it. So it doesn't really matter. That's the direction they're going. And it is incompatible with the things that you and I believe in. And if you don't agree with me here, you'll be wrong again. But you have to agree with me. I've got the floor, I got the mic, I got the lavalier mic, as a matter of fact. Notice I don't even need that. So the Democrats talk about unity and bipartisanship and tolerance and hate. These guys, they are so guilty of projection in every way. There's not one thing bipartisan about them. They want to divide us and balkanize us through identity politics, as I say. Even on race. You know, Martin Luther King judged people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Today's Democratic Party, Don Lemon, CNN, I am offended if you don't look at me by the color of my skin. And there's a movement towards segregation from the left. There's critical race theory, which started probably in the 80s. Some kooky left-wing academic writes that racism is systemic, it's ingrained in our society. And so here's the thing about it. It's convenient for liberals who always want a perpetual victim class different classes, for them to say racism is systemic because you cannot atone for it. You can't come out from under it. It's so deep-rooted in the system, it doesn't even matter what your character is. It doesn't matter what your conduct is. It doesn't matter what your heart is. You could be in love with 50 black people. You could have, all your kids could be married. You could be the most non-racist person in the world, but if you're a white person, I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, I'm just telling the truth, if you're a white person, you are systematically, definitionally, intrinsically racist. That is so destructive, folks. If we look at people according to the color of their skin and not as individual people made in God's image, then we're doing a disservice to them. We are condescending. We are patronizing. If we treat blacks or Hispanics or any other minority differently than we treat ourselves, then we are disrespecting them. And don't tell me that we're the racists. We treat people, we aspire to treat people equally. And that's what we need to do. The Democrats honestly have no solutions. Just virtue signaling slogans. Diversity, inclusiveness, social justice, income equality, cultural appropriate. Oh my gosh, cultural appropriate. Oh, no, I'm not even going to talk about it. That's why insanity, it's appropriately titled, but I can't wear a costume on Halloween without offending some. Do you think do you think minorities are really offended by that? Are they being forced to say they're offended? You can't convince me they're offended by that. But the left wants to get everyone at each other's throats. That's the problem. Intersectionality. You know about intersectionality. If not, I'll bore you in a minute and tell you what it is. White privilege, patriarchy, toxic masculinity. All these things are just terms to pit us against each other. And people thought they were just extreme fringe terms in leftist academia. Now they've seeped into our culture. I don't know if you all notice, if you watch streaming services, you watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, you can't watch a TV show without being preached to. Let alone all the sex, the polyamory, the bigamy, the polygamy, everything. It's rampant, but it's usually the political, I don't mind the sex, it's the political message that bothers me. They're constantly preaching to us. And it's no longer entertainment. It's not that I'm just some mad, hateful, radical conservative, though I am that. It's that I want to watch the show so I can be mindless, so my ADD can get a little treat. But instead they make me focus on this political stuff. And I don't want conservatives to preach either. I do not want that unless it's a specific show like the Clarence Thomas show, the Clarence Thomas movie. That's openly, conspicuously, intentionally for that purpose. There's a place for that, but not on entertainment. But to the left, everything's political, and it's in your face. So they preach tolerance, but they're completely intolerant. They're completely authoritarian and censorious. They want to shut down our speech. You see it all over the place. You don't see conservatives shutting down liberals on college campuses. You don't see one liberal student who's afraid to tell the professor what his politics are for fear of getting docked on his grades. Because you can be a liberal anywhere in America without risk of having your face bashed in or getting a lower grade. You wear a MAGA hat in public in many places in America and you're taking a risk. I'll tell you, they're not the tolerant ones. For them, on all these issues, there's only one acceptable position, and dissenters are evil. To enforce these conclusions, the leftist thought police monitors act as cultural hall monitors. Dissent brings consequences, especially for those within the jurisdiction of the thought cops. Such as I said, the university students at the mercy of their professors and public figures and politicians, subject to the media's wrath. Look at Kevin Hart. He tweeted something. He said he didn't want his kid to marry a gay, and so 10 years earlier, and now they badger him off of the Academy Award, whatever. He couldn't host it. And he apologized, by the way. I'm sure he didn't mean he apologized when he apologized, but they forced him to apologize, and that wasn't enough either. And then some leftist wrote, well, it's like a math problem. You've got to show your work. So it's not enough to apologize. Like Bill Clinton, his apology was real profound. That was my ADD going. That just got right out of there, but I've still got my place. So it's amazing that they wouldn't accept his apology. They said, you've got to go around and raise funds for homosexual causes. I mean, it just blows my mind. No forgiveness. Mark Duplass, however you pronounce his name, tweeted that Ben Shapiro was a nice conservative. And it's amazing that he would even have to tweet this, but he understands. He understands that how much hate there is from the left. So he says, Ben Shapiro's actually a nice guy. He helped me without getting any benefit for himself. Some of you all that follow him, you wouldn't believe the onslaught of hatred he got, to the point where he had to apologize for saying something nice about Ben Shapiro. Do you remember when Joe Biden said that Mike Pence was a decent guy? He just said it off the cuff. He was talking about some conference that Pence had been in, or some diplomatic thing. And they savaged him too. And so you're right. He is a homophobe. He is a jerk. I can't believe I said that. Do people really, here's what gets me. When you force somebody to apologize like that for something they didn't do wrong, when they didn't do anything wrong, are you going to accept their apology? And if you do, are you going to respect them for betraying what principles they should have? I don't know. It makes me crazy. No, you're already crazy. Well, you know. So the Democrats paint Trump as extreme. It amazes me. They paint him as authoritarian. They paint him as a tyrant. I don't even get what they're talking about. Yes, he runs an empire, his own personal empire, and obviously he has serious executive authority in the private sector. But he has not behaved unconstitutionally, unlike Obama's phone and a pen, his lawless executive orders, and expanding the unaccountable, unelected administrative state. He's appointed the most originalist justices. I can't believe, who, by the way, whose duty and pleasure it is to read the Constitution according to its original intent, to preserve the Constitution. Trump is the farthest thing from a threat to the Constitution. So the left paints conservatives, though, not just Trump. It's about hating us too, by the way, as evil. They paint us as evil on every issue. On immigration, we're racist. And by the way, I've heard some Never Trumps talk about this too. I'm so glad that when they're talking about some Trump supporters they saw in a restaurant wearing MAGA hats. I think it was this Charlie Sykes guy. Oh my gosh. Oh. He goes, I'm just so glad when I see that hat that I don't have a problem with people who don't look like me, who aren't my color. Now, Charlie, are you serious? Because we want to protect the border, because we want to protect the American idea, because we want to protect national sovereignty. We want immigration to be orderly. We want people coming into this country. We don't care. It's nothing about race. It's about embracing the American idea to preserve what we have. That's why the naturalization process, you can talk to my uncle who's a federal judge, my cousin who's a federal judge, they'll tell you it's one of the most gratifying processes there is, because the people that come through want to learn about America. They want to learn civics lessons. They want to learn about the Constitution so that they can embrace it and love America. And that's the kind of citizens we want to come in. They paint us as, when we support welfare reform, we lack compassion. When we support voter ID, we want to suppress the minority vote. Now, boy, that's about as patronizing as you can get. Because minorities don't have enough sense to get their ID out. They can't get the ID. I mean, really, think about that. How degrading that is to suggest that minorities can't get their IDs. I have no patience for this intellectual dishonesty. We're against the environment because we're greedy capitalists. We're for the Second Amendment because we're indifferent to gun deaths. We're strict constructionists because we want to preserve the patriarchy. We oppose abortion because we oppose women's autonomy. We oppose same-sex marriage because we're homophobes. We want entitlement reform because we don't care about the elderly. I mean, it's really, they don't have any substantive arguments on any of these issues to speak of, and so they demonize us. It's really, it's so transparent, and it doesn't stop. But we're engaged in a two-front war in this country. Politics and culture. People say politics is downstream from culture. It is. But it's also the other way around. They're interrelated. The left controls the education, Hollywood, mainstream media, social media, as I said, and its monolithic voice floods the culture zone. But on the other hand, Democrats advance that cultural extremism through legislation that codifies these new cultural norms. So we cannot just glibly say it's all in the culture. Politics has so much to do with it. Look what happened when the same-sex marriage thing changed. When the courts changed that. Abortion. There's more abortions. You cannot tell me the law doesn't have an effect on people's behavior. Of course it does. The whole point of deterrent, and there's a positive effect, an affirmative effect, when the law allows things that were previously illegal. So the left is at war with America's founding principles. I believe the GOP message is unifying because we see people as individuals, not as members of groups. And as I said, equal in human dignity, made in God's image. That's what gives rise to inalienable rights. We wouldn't even be talking about inalienable rights, and our founders wouldn't be talking about them if they didn't subscribe to the Judeo-Christian worldview. We're made in God's image, therefore we are intrinsically entitled to those rights that cannot be taken away from us. And conservatives deeply value our God-given natural rights and individual liberties, but they also believe, for the most part, that man is fallen. And our founders believed that too. Not perfectible, unlike the left. So they knew that to establish a system of liberty that could be sustained, they wouldn't just be able to put it down on a piece of paper, no matter how eloquently stated. They knew because man is fallen, that they would have to pit men against each other, fallen men against fallen men. And that's why they established checks and balances. That's why they divided and diffused governmental power horizontally and vertically, the separation of powers, legislative, executive, and judicial competing against each other so that one doesn't get too powerful at the expense of the other and at the expense, therefore, of our individual liberties. The same thing vertical, the system of federalism, dividing power between the national and state and local governments so that no branch gets too powerful. And so those are the structural limitations they put on government. M. Stanton Evans wrote a great book years ago called The Theme is Freedom. And he talked about how other ancient empires had democracy, to be sure. They had representative government. And so you may say America is not unique. But what makes America unique is the limitations that they imposed on government, these structural limitations with teeth in them. So it's not just a matter of democracy or even a representative republic. It's a matter of imposing those limitations on government that ensures our liberties. And the reason I'm making this point is not some academic thing. This is why it is so imperative that we respect the Constitution and the people who are in charge of interpreting it share that view. It's not a matter. The left sees, as I said, ends justifies the means. They see everything as policy. To them, the judiciary is just a third policy branch to make laws. To us, they don't make laws. They interpret laws. And they're the umpire that keep the other branches from getting out of line and engaging in unconstitutional acts, because it's not, for example, the abortion decision politically, as abhorrent to me as abortion is. It's about the governmental powers in the Supreme Court making things up, divining out of penumbras and emanations the right to privacy that doesn't exist in the Constitution as such, and thereby allowing states, or prohibiting states from denying the legality of abortion in many cases. So if you don't respect the Constitution as written, and you don't make a good faith effort to interpret it as the framers and the ratifying American public originally did, then you are allowing the Constitution to be chipped away, which means our liberties are in jeopardy. And that's why we care so much, in addition to the issues. So it's not, we don't appoint pro-life judges. We appoint pro-Constitution, originalist judges who will exercise original restraint. Now, it just so happens most of them are pro-life, but it's false to say that's the criteria. But for the left, rights come from government, and they can take them away. And this started the progressive era in the 30s, and well, actually, in the 1890s, 1900s, through 1920. The progressives, all the intellectuals behind all this, the idea that man is perfectible, that man was advancing so far in science, they could apply these principles to government. So you're going to have these elite experts control and micromanage people's lives. And that, I think, is the root of today's progressives. And that now they've gone full bore crazy. They want to micromanage every aspect of our lives. And they're always going to want to, by the way. We can shellac them in every election from now until my kids' hair is as white as I am, and they will still keep coming back like cockroaches. So don't ever think that they've been finally defeated. Where'd that come from? That wasn't in my notes. So the left promotes a living constitution. Wait, do you have a buzzer down there? I'm still not long yet. I'm watching. Got my Apple Watch. Who do you think gave me this Apple Watch, by the way? There you go. Bet you wish you had a rich brother, don't you? He is the best brother ever, let me tell you right now. Not just because of that either. The left promotes a living constitution and interpreting its language progressively to accommodate the evolutionary changes necessitated by modernity, in their view. So they rationalize whatever they have to do to to twist the Constitution to get the results they want. You know, I think it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg who when someone asked her what she would do about some foreign country looking for advice on the Constitution, she recommended some foreign constitution. This I can't remember anymore because I'm just not that smart. I remembered it like last year. What kind of, like Australia or something. Maybe it's Zimbabwe. Whatever it was not an impressive constitution. And she recommended it over the United States Constitution. Is that outrageous? Is that outrageous? Thank you. Now let me go in to gender ideology. There's some people in this room who are way more equipped to talk about this than I am. And they can if they want. If they think they're so cool, they can come right on up here. Walt, keep seated. Keep seated. Walt Heyer, I learned about this as I was saying it when we were talking earlier about transgenderism by reading his great opinion pieces in Daily Wire and elsewhere. This is fascinating. I won't get into it too much, but to the left now, gender is not biological. It's a social construct. You are not a man or a woman based on your DNA. You are whoever you want to be, however you want to identify. To me, this is so outrageously insane on its face, it doesn't even require refutation, but it does, because this is mainstream now. And by the way, this is going on in these streaming shows I'm watching. It's everywhere. Transgenderism. It's kind of funny because the transgenders have sucked all the oxygen out of the room for homosexuals and feminists. So the homosexuals used to say, I'm born this way. The transgender says, you cannot say you were born that way. You can't even say your kid's a male if he comes out with male equipment, because he's the one who can say who he is when he's old enough to decide what he wants to be. And I can switch back and forth, and there's up to 70 genders now. And there's plural pronouns. And if you don't identify me according to how I dictate, then you can be guilty of a crime of misgendering. And that's happened with fines in certain places. It is funny, but it's sad. It's really sad because they call us science deniers, and we're sitting here having a serious discussion about gender being determined by your whim. However you feel in one day. And so all the oxygen's been sucked out of the room for homosexuals and also feminists, because they can't. Now the feminists used to say, I'm woman, hear me roar. Now we learn that men also, not all women have vaginas. So they can't wear those you-know-what hats. Because, and I'm not kidding you, in my unbelievably good book, I can't remember the actress, probably Deborah Messing. She's always guilty, even if she isn't guilty directly by association. She probably said it. I think she bragged about one of those, about her female parts, and then they totally went after her, and she oh, you're right. Oh, there's so many beautiful women who are actually men. All I'm telling you, people, is They don't believe what they're saying. They're not even that crazy. There's no way they're that crazy. But they do lack courage, moral convictions. And they'll just do whatever it takes to pander to their own crazy colleagues. Intersectionality, I told you I'd tell you what that was, but not until I swerved into it in my notes. This really, if you aren't aware of this, people can have multiple oppressions now. Race, gender, sexual orientation. There's a hierarchy of privileges and therefore a hierarchy of oppressions. So if you're a black woman, you've been mistreated historically more than just a black man or a female, white female. So you're entitled to more protection under the law and in society. And so intersectionality, it's how these oppressions intersect. And that's what they're writing. So how do people have the energy to think about all this negativity, to view everything through these insane gender and racial lenses? I don't know, but it makes good fodder for speeches. The worst thing, well, no, you can't prioritize. There should be some intersectionality thing for their left's crazy issues. And we should prioritize them. But socialism, you guys, they are full-bore socialists now. They don't believe in capitalism. They will deny all of them except the honest, crazy Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren can say she wants to take over the entire economy and then deny she's a socialist. So I say vote Bernie over Elizabeth Warren because he's honest. Since I've been in college, and I'm going to probably tell you every story that's occurred to me since college. When I was in college, they shamed us. Peers shamed us because you're a conservative, you're a Republican. You don't care about people. I've been hearing about this since I was a little kid. You don't care. You want to support people because the Republicans are rich. I have never bought into that. I say it's time that conservatives, that Republicans, well, let me reverse that. It's time that Democrats and liberals be judged according to the results of their alleged good intentions and instead of what they are judged on, which is their intentions which never come true, their policies never come to fruition. And our policies do. And it's driving them crazy. And Shelby Steele had an article in the paper, why Democrats are so frustrated and so hateful. It's because their policies have failed. If you look at busing, you look all the way back, all their policies, welfare, they've all failed miserably and they have nowhere to go. They don't have answers. So all they can do is complain about race, gender, and that type of thing. And that's what we're faced with. But they have resurrected some substantive policies, i.e. socialism. They claim now, as if we've lived in a vacuum the last 200 years, we don't realize that socialism has enslaved and impoverished hundreds of millions of people. It's killed 100 million people. And it's doing it in Venezuela right now. Not killing 100 million people, but it's killing people. It's enslaving people. And they don't care because the socialist always says the right people haven't done it yet. It's amazing. And they call us deniers. I don't know, but they just, these so-called good intentions, I just don't understand it. But we have to remember that despite all this craziness going on, and it seems like it would be self-defeating. It is not. It requires us to be vigilant. It requires, I think, that we educate ourselves about these issues, that we understand what capitalism is, that we understand how the free market works, that we understand the invisible hand of the market that Adam Smith talks about, how a willing buyer and a willing seller enter into a transaction because both parties are going to benefit by definition when they do it under freedom. And that social planners can't possibly know what is going to be beneficial for two individual people, much less extrapolating that through millions in an economy. And so the social planners can't possibly understand. It doesn't work. That's why it fails. It eliminates incentives. It takes away the price factor. And it takes away competition, all of which redounds to the consumer's benefit. So we need to understand how capitalism works and defend it morally, not just intellectually. We need to quit apologizing for the things we believe in because what we believe in is more moral than what they believe in. What they believe in is wrong morally, and it doesn't work. And we need to start having a little, we need to quit apologizing and acting like, well, we're sorry, we're really not mean. I know we're Republican, we seem mean. No, what we advocate gets results. So where does that leave us at this juncture? Will patriots remain mindful of the urgency of these threats? I believe they will, because I believe that our passionate love for this nation and our unwavering dedication to preserving it for our children and their descendants will sustain us. Despite our beleaguered condition, and I do think it's beleaguered. I mean, Trump is doing everything he can, but it's never enough, because they never stop. There are still reasons for optimism. The American people haven't thrown in the towel. And Trump's election, I do believe, signals that America is finally coming to its senses, and patriots have begun to fight back. Americans didn't elect Trump because they had degenerated into some cynical, unserious mood ready to anoint a celebrity entertainer. It's just the opposite. Nor did they turn to him because they are bigots, as alleged. Quite the opposite is true on that score, too. Trump, as I said, didn't arise in a vacuum. He's not the cause of our nation's division. He didn't start a groundswell movement behind new ideas he was articulating. Rather, he rose to power as a direct result of existing division, and because establishment Republicans had failed to retard, let alone stop, the leftist juggernaut. Under Trump, as I said, the Republicans have never been more united. Great strides have been made to turn back the tide. But progressives are not taking these measures sitting down. They've redoubled their resolve, doing everything in their power to destroy Trump and disable his presidency. Each time they are thwarted, they regroup and attack again. So we have to understand we're locked in a perpetual struggle against relentless opponents. Because if we don't, the only alternative is to give up, because they will never quit. So we just have to fight back with the same energy they bring to the table. But it's going to be very difficult and with many obstacles. Some conservatives are disinclined to conclude that many of our fellow Americans are working to change America into something our founding fathers wouldn't recognize, even if many of them are doing so unwittingly. We can't grow numb to what the modern Democratic Party has become. The 2020 presidential and congressional elections could determine whether this country heads permanently down the dark road of socialism, cultural Marxism, and totalitarianism, or returns to its founding freedom tradition. We must work for the re-election of President Trump and congressional Republicans to reverse this leftist assault on America. To prevail in this war for our nation, which we did not start, but we have a duty, a moral duty, to fight back, we must better present our message and expose the destructiveness of progressive policies and politics, which requires us to understand the left's thinking and why it is so foreign and destructive to the American idea, which is why this group is so important. That's exactly what you guys are dedicated to doing. So if Trump's policy successes were sure to be the determining factor, we would have nothing to fear in 2020. But the left will distract voters from the objective evidence and terrify them with false projections of race and gender-infused totalitarianism under a second Trump term. The left will distort his record and deny that his policies are benefiting all groups, especially minorities. The left is relentlessly assaulting our constitutional system, as I said, and traditional values, and viciously attacking those who resist them. We are not the ones causing the division. But we mustn't be chased from the political battlefield by false, malicious charges of racism and sexism, or because we value harmony over America's freedom tradition, or because we value having people say we're not mean, we're really nice people. No, that's not as important as saving America for our kids. So you can be sure the left will never quit, and that a Democratic victory in 2020 will usher in far more divisiveness and radicalism than we see today. The election will be a referendum on capitalism versus socialism, on life versus infanticide. Again, no exaggeration. On gender sanity. I didn't even get into abortion. On gender sanity versus insanity. Gender sanity versus insanity. On equal opportunity versus forced equal outcomes. On colored blindness versus race baiting. On free speech versus censorship. On freedom of thought versus political correctness. On American sovereignty versus open borders, globalism, sanctuary cities, elimination of ICE. On liberty versus authoritarianism. I don't even see how we don't have 90% of the vote. Many, even on the right, downplayed the danger Obama represented to the Republic. And this blind complacency arguably led to where we are today. Those who continue to dismiss or underestimate the designs and determination of the left are contributing in some small way to the problems we face. We must remain vigilant and rise up, fight the left with greater force and perseverance than they are exerting, and that is no small order. Be encouraged that we are fighting for what is right and for the unique American idea, which has produced the freest, most prosperous nation in history, and let us fortify one another with our mutual resolve. God bless President Trump and all patriots who cherish this nation as a shining city on a hill and who have dedicated themselves to the cause of its continued greatness, and God bless all you. Now,